South Africa's got a number of mounting crises. One is energy provision. We simply don't have enough for our needs. And the other, the enormous cost of generating power. The enormous amount of money that has been spent generating power over the last 5 years as South Africa, which has failed to come up with new energy solutions, has spent hundreds of billions of rand on burning things like diesel in order to keep the lights on, as its aging power fleet has become more and more decrepit. Global lessons, though, that's what we're going to be learning from today, all with Absa CIB's Bhavtik Vallabhjee. Now, Bhavtik is the head of power, utilities and infrastructure at Absa CIB. Let's just talk briefly, high-level stuff. Eskom, how much of a mess is it in?
Well, to put things in context, I mean, Eskom, as you know from reports in the media, just is bloated in terms of staff. And you know that they're not the most efficient utility around. So, something's got to give. Right? If you look at where Eskom is, in terms of the wholesale generation tariff at the moment, Eskom's blended power tariff across technologies is in excess of 92 cents per kilowatt hour. And if you look at Medupi and Kusile alone, they keep getting delayed. But a back of the envelope calculation is in excess of 1 Rand 30 per kilowatt hour, Medupi and Kusile.
So that is a problem coming for South Africa. But South Africa used to be one of the lowest cost, most efficient, most effective power producers in the world. What went wrong?
So I think a few things. I think we know about all the contracts, etc., that were awarded by Eskom, not in an open, transparent manner. That has obviously led to the bleeding of Eskom. But I think also, the world has actually changed in the electricity sector. I think Eskom was really designed by what we call six packs. So it's, 6 times 600 megawatt power plants. And that's how we have these massive Medupi and Kusiles, which is, in almost the second and third largest power plants in the world. But the world has actually changed, where renewable energy, gas-fired clean power is actually being the more dominant form of generation. And the days of these large centralized plants wheeling power long distances is actually over. So what you're finding, the trend globally at the moment is power plants at the specific load centers where power is actually required.
Let's talk about some of the trends, because with coal-powered energy today, had Eskom decided that they wanted to build Medupi and Kusile today, they probably wouldn't have got the funding for it. They came up with a funding model, they created these things, they've gone 3 times over budget and probably 8 years over time frame with these things, which have got massive problems in their construction and in the engineering within them. But they're so far down the track that they almost have to complete them. Otherwise, they keep throwing good money after bad. But if they were building them today, would they be funded? Would banks like yourselves be saying, sure, here's a blank check, like happened 10 years ago?
I think it's becoming increasingly more difficult to look at coal-fired power generation. Absa at the moment has supported the 2 coal IPPs in South Africa that were being looked at. That's the Kanisa project and the Thabametsi project. There's 2 international developers behind it. But the trend internationally is that coal-fired power generation, new power plants, or even if it's secondary sales of coal power assets, it's just becoming very difficult to actually deal with. Now in South Africa, we know from the media that there are at least 3 other banks, commercial banks, that have said no, even though they've initially indicated they had appetite for funding these 2 South African coal IPPs, have subsequently reneged on that. So it is becoming more difficult. In fact, almost any OECD bank in the world will not finance coal. And so it is, I think it's a sunset industry, I think.
And it's a tragedy in a way for South Africa, because we've got massive coal reserves. We've got the stuff to burn. Could we find better ways of burning it in order to become more efficient and greener into the future, so that we don't end up mothballing these 2 brand new power stations one day when they do come on stream? So
there are clean coal technologies available. So if you look at the coal baseload program that South Africa had actually taken out, I've mentioned the 2 projects that we're looking at, the tariff set on that, the tariff cap set on those coal plants was about 82 Rand cents per kilowatt hour. If you are looking at clean coal technologies such as supercritical or ultra supercritical, that base tariff is not going to work. So something's got to give. If the government wants to actually have clean coal power plants developed, they're going to have to allow for a higher tariff than the current 82-cent base.
And frankly, South Africans are resisting those higher tariffs. More and more people who can afford it are taking themselves off the grid. They don't trust Eskom to provide. And if Eskom is going to provide, they're not going to provide at a rate they're prepared to pay. So we need to find alternatives. And more we're seeing, even in emerging markets, this idea that renewables, especially in sunny places like South Africa, where there are vast tracts of land which can do with a couple of fuel cells, for example, there's an opportunity here for South Africa to actually leapfrog beyond where we are right now. But from a policy point of view, from an understanding point of view, from a technology point of view, it does feel that we're in a far better place today than we were a year ago, and considerably better than 5 and light years, if you'll forgive the term, more than 2008 when the lights in South Africa went out.
Yes and no. I think yes, in the sense that, barring a small blip that we had, 2 months ago on load shedding, it hasn't happened on a sustained basis. But I think the crunch is far from over, right? So, Eskom is going to lose in the region of 15,000 to 20,000 megawatts in the next several years. That has to be replenished. How we do it depends on what government's energy plan is. And I think this is where cross-pollination of technologies has actually got to be brought to bear. So you're looking at, possibly some coal, maybe clean coal, possibly gas and renewable energy. There's space for all of these technologies. And who knows, government still hasn't given up on nuclear. So that's down the track. It may still come to surface.
Are the policymakers switched on to all possibilities?
Well, it's been publicly said that they are. So we've got to wait for...
No, I know what's been publicly said. In your view, are they aware of the risks and opportunities?
I would hope that they are. Let me put it that way. I think the reality is, if you look at nuclear as an example, post-Fukushima, there were a lot of these nuclear plants that were actually shut down completely in Japan, etc. With renewable energy, with gas-fired generation, there's a ability for governments to actually deploy power in a clean basis on a reliable scale without having these big, massive upfront costs and long lead times to actually build.
Ultimately, we've got to change our energy habits as well. I mean, I think many of us have changed our energy habits. We had the shock of 2008. Anybody who's done a renovation in the last decade has made their homes and their factories and their offices a lot more energy efficient. We're probably much better off as a result of the crisis. From a headspace point of view, at least, and all we need now is certainty.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is very true. And I think, as I've mentioned already, energy is the backbone of any economy. And we've got to actually start looking at alternative ways. And I think given the cost curve effect that we've had on power technologies, I think the market is ripe for us to look at self-sustainability. And we're finding a lot of that. In Germany, as an example, you have what they call net metering. So you could have your home as a generator with rooftop solar, etc. And, generate for self-consumption, and any excess that you have, you plow it back into the grid. Now, we clearly don't have the deep pockets that Germany has, but imagine if we all could do that. We wouldn't have an energy crunch in South Africa.
We most certainly wouldn't. Bhavtik, thank you very much. Bhavtik Vallabhjee. And there was a guy on TV in the 1970s. His name was J.R. Ewing. The actor Larry Hagman lived in California. And before he died, he was one of those guys. So the oil man got renewable. And he was making more money out of the state of California than practically anybody else, selling his excess energy onto the grid. You could do it too, hopefully, one day. Thank you very much for watching this latest update from Absa CIB. This is Absa Insights, and Bhavtik Vallabhjee is the expert on energy at Absa CIB.